Have you ever had a ghostly or supernatural experience? What was it? An auditorium in a theater I managed was haunted. The theater had an automated audio system that would play a pre-recorded radio-style program in between showtimes. The company that uploaded these shows wouldn't update it for months, so we got used to hearing the same 12 songs and jingle-like banter in between them when we would shut down the projector. For the night, we'd also kill the lights in the auditorium. This turned off the speakers as well, so a shut-down booth meant a silent dark theater. One night I had my closing usher come up to me and tell me I left the music on in Theater 10. Funny, Theater 10 last had a show 2 hours ago. I remember shutting it down. Must have only thought I did, so I went back to check it out. Theater 10 was our last theater, all the way in the back of the building. The last door is at the end of the hallway. It's hard to explain, but basically the door to the booth was inside the theater, and they all wrapped around the walls of the booth and opened up into the seating area from the door to the booth. Basically, there was an area around a corner that I couldn't see unless I rounded said corner. I opened the door to the theater, and it's pitch black. If I didn't shut the booth down, the all lights would be on yet. Like my usher said, music was still on. This was different music though. I had heard every terrible pop song that the program had on it for months. This was different. This was like the kind of piano playing you would hear in an old. The movie is almost like in a saloon, but slower and gently played, almost like a lullaby. Then I heard a voice singing. The voice was not coming from the speakers. An older woman's voice started singing from right around the corner from where I was standing in the pitch dark. I immediately knew that I wasn't alone in the theater and knew that nobody had been in the theater for 2 hours because the booth was locked. I had shut it down earlier. After all, I bolted right out of that theater and hauled ass to my office. The final theater got out and I locked up and went home. The next day I came in and checked the cameras from the moment I shut down the booth till 2 hours later. Nobody went in or out of that auditorium besides my usher and myself. I saw my flee of terror. I forwarded all night. Nobody came out. I even checked the emergency exit camera and nothing. I closed for years after that and I never heard her again, but I always got chills going into the theater and started leaving the emergency lights on. When I closed it, I would never be in the dark in the theater again. I had a weird experience not that long ago walking through an old antique store in the really old part of town. It's 3 levels, one of which was an old basement type area. Walked around a corner and got an overwhelming feeling I couldn't explain. It felt almost like an anxiety attack, but combined with dizziness, felt like I was being watched or followed. Tough to really explain. I just felt severely uncomfortable. You know that feeling when you're walking toward your front door at night and in the last 3 steps your subconscious screams run full and you book it inside. It was like that. Anyway, told the wife I need to get the hell out of here, and she could see something weirded me out, so we left. When we got upstairs, my wife stopped to look at something at the counter. I stood there trying to process, and the lady behind the counter made eye contact with me. She said, "You all right?" And I replied, yep, I'm good." And she says to get weirded out downstairs. I said, "Actually, yeah, right at me." And she interrupts and says, "By the corner, down there." I froze and said, yeah, and she says, "Yeah, that's because it's haunted as hell down there. Happens to a lot of us. Owner of this place way back was killed or died down there or something. That's what they say." I weirded me out, but it was a neat experience. 2 situations, both at my parents' house, and only one I was there alone overnight. To make this even more strange, my father passed away from cancer a few years ago and was very sick for a while. He told my mom about 2 ghosts that lived in their house with a girl and her mom, but said they were nice. I'd never told them my encounters, but that confirmed it for me. One nighttime, parents were gone for a few nights to some event, and my first time staying in the house alone. During this time, I never went into their bedroom, and there were no problems with it the first night or 2. On day 3, the alarm clock randomly went off at about 3 or 4 in the morning on a Wednesday. The issue is that they had in the old school alarm clock that you could set on or off, and not for certain days of the week. As the only person who had been in the house and knowing that it hadn't been in their room to accidentally hit it, and they wouldn't have set an alarm for that time, is safe to say I feel something weird happened. 2 days time, a year or so after the incident, one parent were again gone for something or other, and I was in the house alone. Overnight at the time, we had a lab/retriever mixed dog, and I are sitting in the living room just relating in. The afternoon, she is laying on the floor and I am sitting on the couch playing on my phone, no TV on, just hanging out. The dog sits up and starts very attentively staring at the wall. Doesn't appear scared, but really odd behavior. All of a Sudden a canvas the picture jumps off the wall and falls to the floor, and the exact spot dog was staring. Once I got the courage, I decided to check out the picture/wall to see if there was a solution. Hope was totally fine, as was the hanger on the back of the picture. No explanation. I hung the picture back up, and it's still in the same place at my mom's house now. When I moved into my first apartment, I couldn't find one I could afford that allowed pets, so I had to leave my cat with my parents. She got sick unexpectedly and had to be put down. I lived too far away from them to get there to say goodbye. The next weekend I went home to visit my parents. In the middle of the night I felt her hop up on my pillow and lay next to my ear. Purring half asleep, I petted her. After a few minutes, she jumped down and I sat up and watched her walk out of the room. Then I remembered she was dead. I never saw her again. I think she just stayed long enough to say goodbye. The house I grew up in was built in the 1950s were pretty creepy. The guy my parents bought it from said he woke up one night to being hugged from behind. He thought it was his wife, who actually hated the house because she said there were too many dead souls in it, so she apparently stayed at their house in Italy. When he was in the US, he turned over and no one was there. I don't know why he was offering this info to potential buyers, but they were all having dinner and drinks, and I guess my mom was kind of saying how she thought that stuff was interesting, so he felt like it was okay anyway. I was home for the summer during college and felt something massaging my legs. I sprung up in bed and waved my hand over my legs, and nothing was there, but it was still happening. I actually said out loud, "This isn't happening," and turned over, and it stopped. Told my older brother about it years later, and he said the same happened to him in high school. Lots of other weird stuff happened in that house, but that's the only thing that happened to me directly that I couldn't figure out how to rationalize. Somehow I lived in this apartment with my girlfriend that had this long hallway with 2 bedrooms in the hallway. Our bedroom was at the end of the hallway. Whenever we went to bed at night, it always felt like something was right behind us. It didn't matter if we went to bed alone or together. It always felt like something was watching you no matter where you were at in that apartment. One morning, I woke up 2 footsteps in the hallway. I listened for a while but didn't hear anything else. I laid back down and heard them again. I opened my eyes and the footsteps stopped. I started to drift off again when I felt something slam down on the bed. I jump up and nothing is there. My girlfriend wakes up and he walks around the apartment. The doors are locked. The windows are locked. My dad owns the building. That was built in the 1960s. That was a stagecoach stop and inn and numerous other things in its history. George Washington had stayed at night there at one point during or just after the Revolution. The building was definitely haunted. As a kid, I often saw out of the corner of my eye a woman running across the field behind the building. When I turned to look at her, there would be no one there. She had on a pink Victorian-era dress. It freaked me out as a kid, but seeing weird stuff there was out of the ordinary. Years later, I found out that the woman belonged to the house across the field. As the story goes, she was at her family home getting ready for her wedding. Later that day, her fiance was at the end of our old-ass building waiting for a carriage to take him to the church. He ended up getting shot over a game of cards and died. His killer got dragged outside and hung on the spot. When hearing the news that her fiance had died, the woman ran across the field in her dress in an effort to get to him. I knew 2 different owners of the house across the field, and they both have seen a woman in a pink Victorian dress pacing in an upstairs room. I lived with a college roommate after college for about 4 years. He dated this girl who continually said she had supernatural things happen to. In her words, she was haunted, and some of the stories she told me made me strongly believe her. She said she would constantly see a figure standing in the corner of her room that would block the light in the shape of a person, like a shadow. She said she would feel something moving in her bed with her. She said her cat would constantly stare at the shadow figure she would see in her room. She said she would have dreams, but she explained it like awake dreams, there being a girl in her house telling her she had to leave because the girl in the dream didn't let them have guests over. She said many years prior she brought a guy home one night who left in the middle of the night with a text that said something along the lines of, "Hey, I thought you said you lived alone. There was someone in your apartment. I saw them when I got up to use the bathroom. There were more, but it was like 6 years ago now, so I don't entirely remember them all." One night she told me that in our apartment, she felt something get in bed with her and just assumed it was my roommate. So she turned to cuddle and legitimately felt that there was another person there. She said a few minutes later my roommate came into the room and then she realized that she was having another haunting episode. I always believed her because she was a terrible bullshitter, had no reason to lie, and just went into such detail about it that it all seemed so real. It got even more real. One night I was sleeping in my bed and woke up in the middle of The night with my door wide open and the hallway light on both of these were extremely uncommon because 1. I never sleep with my door open, and 2. I am a utility Nazi, so I always turn the lights off. It was one of those things where you're still 90 asleep, so you shrug it off and go back to bed. Seconds later I felt something get in bed with me the same exact way you would feel someone get on the other side of the bed with you. I felt the pressure of the bed go down from the weight of a person on the other side. I then felt my covers move as someone else was getting comfortable. I then felt an arm go across my chest as if someone was cuddling me. My body froze, chills head to toe. I couldn't move. It's hard to explain, but it's not that I couldn't move because of the weight of someone's arm on my chest was too heavy to move, but I couldn't move more so in the sense that I was just frozen still to where physically I was paralyzed in shock for what felt like ages, but was more realistically 20 seconds. I was able to let out like a haunted heavy breathed yell, and then I felt like getting off, still unable to move. I could see a figure move from the side of my bed to the entryway to my bedroom door where the hallway light was blocked from its shadow. I went and woke my roommate's girlfriend up and told her about it. She could see the horror in my face, and the way I explained my story, she told me that is exactly what has been happening to her for years. It freaked me out to say the least. A few, most notably after my grandpa died, I saw his face in the window of my room. I was so scared I ran to my mom. My mom told my dad to call his brothers to check on his dad. He had died earlier that night. I guess he was saying goodbye. Also, when my best friend died, my electronics started acting wonky. I had the speaker that I'd never had problems with, and I was playing music on it, and it was the night I found out she died. I had music on to muffle my crying. I was playing a sad song and it kept stopping. I'd go to press play, but just before I could, it turned back on by itself several times in a row. Thanks for listening. The subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more things you don't want to know. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories.